The phone rang at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday that would fracture Maya Chen's world into before and after. She'd been awake anyway, staring at her laptop screen where her business finance homework glowed like a reproach in the darkness of her cramped studio apartment. The settlement check from State Farm, $47,000 for the accident that had left her with a titanium rod in her left leg and 3 months of physical therapy, should have been sitting in her savings account, accumulating the modest interest that would help fund her senior year at UC Berkeley. Instead, the account showed $127.43. Ms. Chen? The voice on the other end was gravelly, with the kind of careful politeness that preceded very bad news. This is Vincent Torino from Golden Gate Gaming. We need to discuss your father's outstanding debt. Maya's bare feet touched the cold hardwood floor as she sat up straighter. Her father, David Chen, had been radio silent for 6 weeks. The last time she'd seen him, he'd been standing in her doorway with his trademark sheepish grin, promising he just needed to borrow the settlement money for a sure-thing business opportunity. She trusted him because he was her father, because he'd raised her alone after her mother's death from cancer when Maya was 14, because she wanted to believe that the man who had once stayed up all night helping her build a volcano for the science fair wouldn't steal her future. "I think you have the wrong number," Maya said, though her stomach was already dropping like an elevator with cut cables. "I don't know anything about gambling debts." "Actually, Ms. Chen, according to our records, you're now the majority owner of the Golden Gate Casino. Your father used your settlement money as collateral in a high-stakes poker game last month. When he lost, he signed over his ownership stake to cover his markers. The problem is, the casino was apparently never legally his to begin with. It seems he forged documents claiming you were his business partner. So technically, you've been the owner all along." The world tilted sideways. Maya gripped the phone so hard her knuckles went white, staring at her reflection in the black window. 22 years old, 5'3" of exhausted pre-med student who survived on ramen noodles and caffeine, now apparently the owner of a gambling establishment she'd never seen. "That's impossible. I don't even know where this casino is located." "Chinatown, Ms. Chen, on Grant Avenue. Been in operation for 18 months under your name. Your father's been running it as the manager, but legally speaking, all the licenses, the property deed, even the liquor permit, they're all in your name." Maya's leg began to throb, the titanium rod responding to stress like a barometer predicting storms. She limped to her kitchenette, needing something to do with her hands, and opened the refrigerator to stare at its meager contents. Leftover Chinese takeout, a half-empty carton of milk that was probably expired, and a container of yogurt with her roommate's name aggressively written in permanent marker. Her roommate, Zoe, was spending the semester studying abroad in Prague, which meant Maya was shouldering the full rent on their place. The part-time job at the bookstore barely covered her expenses, and she'd been counting on that settlement money to carry her through graduation and into medical school. She'd already been accepted to UCSF for the fall, contingent on maintaining her GPA and paying the enrollment deposit. "Ms. Chen, are you still there?" "I'm here." Her voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from the bottom of a well. "What exactly are you saying? That I own a casino I've never heard of and my father has been running it illegally?" "Not illegally per se, more like creatively. He had power of attorney to act on your behalf for business matters, apparently established when you were recovering from your accident. But the debt he's accumulated in the past month, that's very real and very much your responsibility now." Maya sank into the threadbare armchair she'd bought secondhand from a graduating senior. The fabric was worn soft in places, and it smelled faintly of the vanilla candles the previous owner had burned. It was the only piece of furniture in the apartment that felt like home, and now even that comfort felt precarious. How much debt? Preparing and narrating this type of story took as long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The pause stretched long enough for Maya to hear her neighbor's television through the thin walls, some late-night infomercial selling miracle weight loss supplements. When Vincent finally spoke, his voice was gentler, as if he understood he was about to detonate her life. $237,000. The number hit her like a physical blow. Maya doubled over, pressing her face into her hands, smelling the faint antiseptic scent that never quite washed off her skin from her job at the campus medical center. $237,000? It was more money than she could comprehend, more than she'd earned in the first 5 years of her medical career, assuming she could still afford to have a medical career. "That's not possible," she whispered. "My father wouldn't. He couldn't. Miss Chen, I'm going to be straight with you, because I think you're getting caught up in something you had no part in creating. Your father has a serious gambling problem. He's been moving money through the casino for months, using the business account like his personal piggy bank. The casino's been operating in the red since it opened, and he's been covering losses with borrowed money from some very serious people." Maya's mind raced, trying to process the implications. She thought of her father as she'd last seen him, wearing his lucky red polo shirt, the one with the small hole near the left shoulder that he refused to throw away. He'd been carrying a leather briefcase she'd never seen before, and his eyes had held a brightness that she'd mistaken for excitement, but now recognized as the manic gleam of addiction. "What happens now?" she asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. "Well, that depends on you. Legally, the casino and its debts are yours. You can try to sell the business to cover what's owed, but given the current financial state, you'd be lucky to get 50 cents on the dollar. Or you can try to run it yourself, turn it around, and pay off the debt over time." The suggestion was so absurd that Maya almost laughed. "I'm a pre-med student. I don't know anything about running a casino. I've never even been inside one." "Your father seemed to think you were a quick learner. He talked about you constantly, how smart you are, how you were going to be a doctor, how proud he was of your business sense." Vincent's voice took on an odd quality, as if he was quoting someone he'd liked despite himself. "Look, Miss Chen, I know this is a lot to process. Why don't you come down tomorrow and see the place? Meet with me and my associates. Maybe we can work something out." Associates. The word sent a chill through Maya that had nothing to do with the apartment's broken heating system. She'd grown up in San Francisco, had heard enough stories about Chinatown's underground economy to know that associates in the gambling world weren't the kind of people you wanted to owe money to. "What if I just walk away? Declare bankruptcy or something?" Another pause. This one felt different, weighted with implications that made Maya's skin prickle. "Miss Chen, when you're dealing with the kind of people your father borrowed from, bankruptcy isn't really an option. These aren't credit card companies or banks. They don't just write off losses and move on." The threat was delivered so quietly, so matter-of-factly, that it took a moment for the full meaning to sink in. Maya felt the walls of her small apartment closing in, the familiar space suddenly feeling like a trap. Her laptop screen had gone dark, leaving only the reflection of her own face in the black monitor, pale, angular features inherited from her mother, dark eyes wide with the kind of fear that lived in your bones. She thought of her father's hands, permanently stained with ink from the print shop where he'd worked for 15 years before mysteriously quitting 8 months ago. Those hands had taught her to ride a bike, to change a tire, to fold perfect dumplings every Chinese New Year. How had those same hands forged her signature, stolen her money, and tangled her up in debts to dangerous strangers? "I need to think about this," Maya said finally. "Of course. But, Miss Chen, don't think too long. Interest accumulates daily, and my associates, well, they're not known for their patience." After Vincent hung up, Maya sat in the darkness for a long time, listening to the city sounds filtering through her windows. San Francisco never truly slept. There was always the distant hum of traffic on the Bay Bridge, the occasional siren, the rumble of late-night buses carrying service workers home from their shifts in the financial district. Normally, these sounds comforted her, a reminder that she was part of something larger than her own small struggles. Tonight, they felt like the soundtrack to a life spinning out of control. She picked up her phone and scrolled to her father's contact information. The photo she'd assigned to his number showed him at her high school graduation, beaming with pride as he held up a bouquet of roses. His hair was still mostly black then, before stress and whatever secret demons he'd been fighting had turned it silver at the temples. She pressed call and listened to it ring once, twice, 3 times before going to voicemail. "Dad, it's Maya. Vincent Torino called me. We need to talk. Call me back as soon as you get this." But even as she left the message, she suspected she wouldn't hear from him. David Chen had never been good at facing consequences. When Maya was 16 and had caught him crying over unpaid bills at the kitchen table, he disappeared for 3 days, returning with a new job and a bright smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, never acknowledging that anything had been wrong. When her mother was dying and the medical bills mounted higher than their insurance could cover, he handled it by working double shifts and refusing to discuss their financial situation, as if not talking about it would somehow make it less real. Maya limped to her desk and pulled out a notebook, the one she used for budgeting and planning. Her neat handwriting filled pages with careful calculations: tuition payments, living expenses, study schedules, application deadlines for medical school. All of it suddenly meaningless in the face of a $250,000 debt she hadn't known existed 12 hours ago. She flipped to a fresh page and wrote Golden Gate Casino at the top. Below it, she began making lists. What she knew, almost nothing. What she needed to find out, everything. And what her options were, apparently very few. The physical act of writing helped calm her racing thoughts, a habit ingrained by years of taking meticulous notes in pre-med classes where missing a single detail could mean the difference between saving a life and losing one. By the time the sun began to rise over the Oakland hills, painting her apartment walls in shades of rose and gold, Maya had made her decision. She couldn't run from this, Vincent had made that clear enough. She couldn't afford a lawyer to untangle the legal mess her father had created. And she couldn't live with the thought of dangerous people coming to collect debts she'd never agreed to. Which meant she had exactly one option. She was going to have to learn how to run a casino. Maya Chen had always been a creature of routine, finding comfort in the predictable rhythms of academic life. Every morning at 6:30 a.m., she'd wake to the sound of her phone alarm, a gentle chime that gradually increased in volume, designed to ease her into consciousness rather than jolt her awake. She'd learned this trick from a sleep study article she'd read freshman year, back when she still believed that optimizing every aspect of her life could somehow protect her from the chaos that seemed to follow her family like a shadow. The morning after Vincent's call, however, she woke up at 5:15 a.m. to the sound of her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. The dream that had jolted her awake was already fading, but she retained the impression of being trapped in a room with no doors while faceless men in expensive suits counted money that wasn't hers. She lay in bed for several minutes, staring at the water stain on her ceiling that looked like a lopsided heart, trying to convince herself that the previous night's phone call had been a nightmare. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her study partner, James Rodriguez. "Coffee at 8? Biochem exam next week is going to destroy us all." The normalcy of it felt surreal. James had no idea that Maya's world had imploded in the space of a 20-minute phone conversation. To him, she was still just the dedicated pre-med student who color-coded her notes and never missed a study session. Maya typed back, "Can't today, family emergency." It was the truth, though it felt inadequate to describe the magnitude of what she was facing. How do you explain that you've suddenly become responsible for a business you've never seen and debts you didn't know existed? She made coffee in the French press that had been a birthday gift from her father 2 years ago, a thoughtful present from someone who remembered that she preferred her coffee strong enough to dissolve spoons. As the rich, bitter smell filled her small kitchen, Maya found herself studying the press as if it might hold clues to her father's transformation from the man who noticed her coffee preferences to someone who would steal her insurance settlement and forge her signature. The contradictions had always been there, she realized. David Chen was generous with small gestures, bringing her soup when she was sick, remembering her favorite bakery's closing time so he could surprise her with fresh croissants, but had always been secretive about larger matters, money, relationships, his own emotions. These were territories he guarded jealously, deflecting questions with jokes or sudden changes of subject. Maya's phone rang as she was getting dressed for what she decided would be her reconnaissance mission to Chinatown. The caller ID showed Berkeley Financial Aid, and her stomach clenched with the realization that her life was now going to be divided into before and after categories, with every normal interaction tainted by her new circumstances. Miss Chen? This is Sandra Martinez from the Financial Aid Office. I'm calling about your FAFSA renewal and some discrepancies we've found in your family's financial information. Maya closed her eyes, already knowing what was coming. What kind of discrepancies? Well, according to the business license database, you're listed as the owner of a commercial enterprise in San Francisco, the Golden Gate Casino, but your FAFSA application indicates no business income or assets. We'll need you to come in and clarify the situation, as it could significantly impact your aid eligibility for next year. The cruel irony wasn't lost on her. On paper, she was the owner of a business that probably generated substantial revenue. In reality, she was about to lose her financial aid because of an enterprise she'd never seen, inherited through fraud, and saddled with debt that could follow her for the rest of her life. I can come in this afternoon, Maya said, already mentally rearranging her day. There's been a misunderstanding about my involvement in that business. After hanging up, Maya stood in front of her bathroom mirror and practiced explaining the situation. My father forged my signature and opened a casino in my name without my knowledge. Sounded like the kind of excuse students invented to avoid consequences for their own poor decisions. How do you prove that you're the victim rather than the perpetrator when all the legal documents bear your name? She dressed carefully for her trip to Chinatown, choosing clothes that struck a balance between professional and approachable. Dark jeans, a white button-down shirt, and her only blazer, a navy blue thrift store find that she'd worn to job interviews and important meetings. Looking at herself in the mirror, she looked like what she was, a college student playing dress-up, trying to appear more confident and capable than she felt. The moony ride to Chinatown gave Maya time to think about her relationship with her father. They'd been a team for so long after her mother's death, united by grief and the necessity of figuring out how to function as a family of two. David had learned to braid her hair for school, badly, but with dedication. And Maya had learned to cook basic meals when his work schedule became unpredictable. They'd developed their own shorthand, their own traditions, their own way of navigating the world together. But now, reviewing those memories with the harsh clarity of betrayal, Maya began to see patterns she'd missed or ignored. The way her father would sometimes disappear for hours without explanation, returning with Chinese takeout and elaborate stories about traffic or unexpected errands. The phone calls he'd take in another room, lowering his voice to a whisper. The periods of unusual generosity, followed by stretches when money was mysteriously tight. The symptoms of addiction, she realized with the clinical detachment her pre-med training had taught her. Problem gambling was a recognized behavioral disorder, with diagnostic criteria as specific as any physical illness. Preoccupation with gambling, needing to bet increasing amounts to achieve the same excitement, irritability when attempting to cut back, using gambling to escape problems or relieve feelings of helplessness, lying to family members to conceal involvement, jeopardizing relationships or opportunities because of gambling. Her father had exhibited every single criterion, and she'd missed them all because she was looking at him through the lens of love, rather than the objective eye of medical diagnosis. The bus lurched to a stop at the intersection of Grant and Bush, and Maya stepped off into the familiar chaos of Chinatown. She'd grown up coming here with her parents for dim sum on Sundays, for grocery shopping at stores that carried ingredients her mother needed for authentic Cantonese dishes, for the New Year celebrations that filled the streets with color and music and the smell of firecrackers. The neighborhood held some of her happiest childhood memories, which made it feel particularly cruel that it was also the location of her current nightmare. She walked slowly down Grant Avenue, looking for anything that resembled a casino. The street was lined with the usual mix of tourist shops selling cheap souvenirs, authentic restaurants with ducks hanging in the windows, and small groceries packed with mysterious jars and packages labeled in Chinese characters. Maya's Mandarin was limited to basic conversational phrases, another source of guilt, as her mother had wanted her to be bilingual, but Maya had been more interested in her science classes than language lessons. 3 blocks down, she found it. A narrow storefront wedged between a tea shop and a store selling jade jewelry. The sign was discreet, written in both English and Chinese characters. Golden Gate Gaming. Private club. Members only. The windows were tinted dark enough that she couldn't see inside, and there was no indication of what kind of gambling took place within. Maya stood on the sidewalk for several minutes, gathering her courage. A steady stream of people walked past, tourists consulting maps, elderly Chinese women pulling wire shopping carts, business people hurrying to appointments. No one paid any attention to her, but she felt exposed nonetheless, as if her connection to this place was somehow visible on her face. Finally, she approached the door. It was solid wood, painted black, with a brass handle that looked expensive. There was no doorbell or intercom, just a small plaque that read, "Ring for entry." Maya pressed the button and waited, her heart hammering against her ribs. The door opened to reveal a young man about her own age, dressed in a crisp white shirt and black slacks. He was Asian American, probably Chinese, with the kind of careful haircut and manicured appearance that suggested he took his job seriously. "Can I help you?" he asked in accented English, his tone polite but cautious. "I'm Maya Chen. Vincent Torino is expecting me." The young man's expression shifted immediately, surprise replacing wariness. "Miss Chen, yes, of course. Please come in. Mr. Torino told me you might be stopping by today." Maya stepped through the doorway and found herself in a narrow hallway, carpeted and deep red. The walls were painted a warm gold, and traditional Chinese lanterns hung from the ceiling, casting everything in a soft amber light. It was elegant in an understated way, nothing like the gaudy casino interiors she'd imagined based on movies and television. "I'm Tommy Wu," the young man said, leading her deeper into the building. "I work the front desk, manage memberships, that sort of thing. Your father spoke about you often. He was very proud." The past tense wasn't lost on Maya. "Where is my father?" Tommy's step faltered slightly. "We haven't seen him in about 2 weeks. Mr. Torino can explain the situation better than I can."
They passed through a doorway into the main gaming area, and Maya stopped short. The space was larger than the narrow storefront had suggested, probably extending into the buildings on either side. Round tables were arranged throughout the room, some for cards, others for mahjong. Along one wall were several electronic gambling machines that looked like a hybrid between slot machines and video game consoles. The lighting was warm and inviting, the atmosphere more like an upscaled private club than her conception of a gambling den. Even at 10:30 in the morning, about a dozen people were scattered throughout the room, most of them middle-aged or elderly Chinese men and women. They looked like retirees or business people taking a break, not the dangerous criminals Maya had imagined. Many nodded politely as she passed, and she realized with a shock that they probably knew who she was. At least, they knew who they thought she was. Vincent Torino's office was in the back corner, behind a door marked private in both English and Chinese. Tommy knocked and announced her arrival, then stepped aside to let her enter. Vincent was not what Maya had expected. The voice on the phone had conjured images of a stereotypical mob enforcer, but the man who stood to greet her was probably in his 50s, dressed in a well-tailored gray suit, with salt and pepper hair and intelligent brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He could have been a banker or a college professor, someone you'd trust with your retirement planning. "Miss Chen, thank you for coming. I know this situation must be overwhelming." His handshake was firm, but not intimidating. His manner professional rather than threatening. "Please, sit down. Can I get you coffee? Tea?" Maya chose the chair across from his desk, noting the personal touches in the office. Family photos showing Vincent with a woman and 2 teenage children, diplomas from UC Berkeley and Golden Gate University, a small succulent garden on the windowsill. This wasn't the lair of a criminal. It was the workplace of someone who seemed to genuinely care about creating a comfortable environment. Mr. Torino? Vincent, please. And may I call you Maya? Your father talked about you so much, I feel like I know you already. Vincent, then. I need you to help me understand what my father has done, and what it means for me. Vincent opened a file folder on his desk, revealing a stack of documents that looked official and intimidating. The short version is that your father has a serious gambling problem, and he's been using the casino's business account to cover his personal debts. The longer version, well, that's more complicated. He pulled out a photograph and slid it across the desk. Maya recognized her own signature on what appeared to be a business loan application. The handwriting was perfect. Not even she would have been able to tell it was forged. Your father is extremely talented at document reproduction. It's probably how he supported his gambling habit for as long as he did. He can forge signatures, create fake pay stubs, even reproduce official seals and stamps. He used those skills to establish this business in your name, probably intending to pay everything back before you found out. Maya stared at her forged signature, feeling a cold fury building in her chest. This wasn't just theft, it was identity theft, committed by the person who was supposed to protect her from exactly this kind of betrayal. How long has this been going on? The casino opened 18 months ago. For the first year, it was actually profitable, small margins, but steady income. Your father has a good head for business when he's not gambling. But about 6 months ago, something changed. Maybe the addiction got worse. Maybe he got in over his head with some high-stakes games. He started borrowing money from local lenders to cover casino losses, then using casino profits to pay gambling debts. It became a vicious cycle. Vincent pulled out a ledger book, its pages covered with careful handwriting in different colors of ink. I've been trying to keep track of the money flow, but it's complicated. Some of the debt is owed to legitimate lenders who are willing to work with us, but about $60,000 is owed to people who aren't as patient. What does that mean exactly? It means that they expect payment in full with interest within a specified time frame. And if they don't receive it, they have non-traditional methods of collection. Maya felt the same chill she'd experienced during the phone call, but she forced herself to focus on practical matters. Show me the books, all of them. I need to understand exactly what I'm dealing with. For the next 2 hours, Vincent walked her through the casino's finances. The numbers told a story of gradual deterioration, of a small business slowly being cannibalized by its owner's addiction. The casino itself had potential. The location was good, the customer base was loyal, and the profit margins on gambling were inherently high. But David Chen had systematically siphoned off every dollar of profit and then some, leaving the business technically solvent, but actually operating on borrowed time. Maya took notes, asked questions, and tried to maintain the same analytical approach she used in her chemistry classes. Treat it like a problem to be solved rather than a catastrophe to be survived. But underneath her professional demeanor, she was grappling with a deeper emotional crisis. How do you reconcile love for someone with the reality of what they've done to you? Her father had always been her hero. After her mother's death, he'd been everything. Provider, protector, friend, cheerleader. She'd structured her entire life around making him proud, choosing pre-med because he'd always talked about how smart she was, how she could be anything she wanted to be. Even her decision to stay local for college had been partly motivated by not wanting to leave him alone. Now she was discovering that the person she'd been trying to protect was the same person who had been systematically destroying her future. Vincent, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. He nodded, his expression serious. Is my father a bad person? The question seemed to surprise him. He leaned back in his chair, considering carefully before answering.
Your father is a person with an addiction. That doesn't make him bad, but it makes him dangerous to himself and to the people he loves. He genuinely cares about you, Maya. Everything he did, he told himself he was doing for you. The problem with addiction is that it rewrites your moral compass. Things that would have been unthinkable become justifiable, then necessary, then inevitable. Maya stared out the window at the busy street below them, watching people go about their normal days, unaware of the crisis unfolding in the office above them. What would you do if you were me? I'd be very careful about my next decision, because it's going to determine the rest of your life. You can try to walk away, but that's going to have consequences that extend beyond just your financial future. You can try to sell the business, but given the debt load and the circumstances, you'd be lucky to break even. Or you can learn to run this place yourself, pay off the debts gradually, and turn it into something legitimate. I don't know anything about gambling. I don't even like gambling. Vincent smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. Maya, your father told me you're studying to be a doctor. Running a casino is actually less complicated than human anatomy. It's about understanding probability, managing risk, maintaining customer relationships, and keeping accurate books. If you can memorize the Krebs cycle, you can learn to run a gaming operation.
The first thing you need to understand, Vincent explained, spreading blueprints across his desk, is that this isn't like the casinos in Vegas or Reno. Those are entertainment destinations. This is a community institution. Our regular customers aren't tourists looking for a thrill, they're neighbors. Mrs. Liu comes in every Tuesday and Thursday to play mahjong with her friends. Mr. Zhang stops by after his shift at the restaurant down the street. These people knew your father, and they trust the Golden Gate name because they trusted him. The weight of inherited responsibility settled on Maya's shoulders like a lead blanket. It was one thing to discover she owned a business. It was another to realize that dozens of people depended on that business for their social connections and recreational activities. The casino wasn't just generating revenue, it was providing a service to a community that had limited options for cultural gambling games that weren't available in mainstream American establishments. Her second day of education was interrupted by a visit from Marcus Holloway, a licensing inspector from the California Department of Justice. He was a tall, lean man in his 40s, with the kind of methodical manner that suggested he enjoyed finding irregularities in paperwork. Maya watched through Vincent's office window as he systematically examined every gaming table, measured distances between machines, and took photographs of license displays. "We've received some anonymous complaints about this establishment," he told Maya when Vincent introduced them. "Questions about the legitimacy of the ownership structure, concerns about money laundering, reports of illegal activities. I'm here to conduct a full compliance review." Maya felt her carefully constructed composure begin to crack. She'd been operating on the assumption that she had time to figure out the casino business, that she could learn as she went and gradually take control of the situation. But Inspector Holloway's presence made it clear that she was already under scrutiny, that mistakes could result in criminal charges rather than just financial losses. "I'm new to the business," she said carefully. "Is there anything specific I should be aware of?" Holloway's smile was cold and professional. "Miss Chen, California gaming regulations are extremely strict. Every transaction must be documented, every customer verified, every employee background checked. If I find any violations, and I mean any violations, I have the authority to suspend your license immediately. And once a gaming license is suspended, it's very difficult to get it reinstated." Over the following days, Maya discovered the full extent of her father's carelessness. David Chen had been operating the casino with a casual disregard for regulations that bordered on the criminal. Employee records were incomplete,
Customer verification was inconsistent, and financial reporting was so chaotic that Maya couldn't determine whether the business was actually profitable or just moving money around to create the illusion of success. The third crisis arrived in the form of Elena Vasquez, a labor organizer from the Service Employees International Union. Maya was attempting to balance the previous month's receipts when Elena walked into Vincent's office without knocking, carrying a folder thick with documents and wearing the kind of determined expression that preceded very expensive problems. "Miss Chen, I'm here on behalf of your employees. Are you aware that none of your workers are receiving health insurance, overtime pay, or proper break schedules as required by California labor law?" Maya looked at Elena blankly. "I wasn't aware we had employees. I thought Vincent was the manager and Tommy worked the front desk, but I assumed they were independent contractors or partners or something." Elena's expression shifted from combative to concerned. "Miss Chen, you have 12 full-time employees and 6 part-time workers, dealers, security guards, cleaning staff, kitchen workers, bookkeepers. All of them have been working without proper employment agreements for over a year." The folder Elena placed on the desk contained timesheets, pay stubs, and testimonials from workers who described conditions that sounded borderline exploitative. 18-hour shifts without overtime pay, no sick leave, no workers' compensation insurance, wages that were
sometimes delayed by weeks when the casino's cash flow was tight. Maya's father had been operating a sweatshop disguised as a gaming establishment. "Mrs. Chen, I can call you Mrs. Chen, right? Your workers respect you because they respected your father. But respect doesn't pay rent or medical bills. I'm giving you 2 weeks to bring this operation into compliance with labor regulations, or we'll be filing complaints with the Department of Labor and organizing a strike." After Elena left, Maya sat in Vincent's office feeling like she was drowning in incompetence and inherited guilt. Every day brought new revelations about the scope of her father's negligence, and she was beginning to understand that running a casino required expertise in areas she'd never considered: labor law, tax compliance, municipal regulations, health and safety codes, anti-money laundering protocols, and customer service standards. "Vincent, how did my father manage all of this? Did he just ignore the regulations and hope no one would notice?" Vincent looked uncomfortable, which was answer enough. "Your father was creative in his approach to compliance. He had a network of friends who would help him navigate problems when they arose. But that network dried up when his gambling debts became known in the community. People who had been willing to overlook minor violations weren't willing to risk their own reputations to cover for someone with a serious addiction." The fourth catastrophe arrived at 3:47 p.m. on Friday in the form of a phone call from Dr. Patricia Williams, the Dean of Students at UC Berkeley. Maya had been dreading this conversation since her meeting with the financial aid office earlier in the week. "Ms. Chen, we need to discuss your academic standing in light of some concerning information that's come to our attention. According to state business records, you're the owner of a gambling establishment, which creates several conflicts with your enrollment status and your eligibility for need-based financial aid." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the last vestiges of her old life slipping away. She'd worked so hard to maintain her academic performance while dealing with her father's crisis, but the administrative machinery of the university was grinding inexorably toward a conclusion that would end her medical school dreams. "Dr. Williams, there's been a misunderstanding. The business was established in my name without my knowledge or consent. I'm working to resolve the situation, but it's complicated." "Ms. Chen, I understand that family financial situations can be complex, but the university has a responsibility to ensure that students are honest in their applications for aid. If you're a business owner, that needs to be reflected in your FAFSA paperwork. Additionally, there are questions about whether continued enrollment in a pre-med program is compatible with operating a gambling establishment. The Medical Licensing Board takes a very dim view of applicants with connections to gaming operations." The conversation continued for 20 minutes, each exchange making Maya's situation more precarious.
Dr. Williams explained that the university would need to conduct a full review of Maya's academic eligibility, which could result in the suspension of her financial aid and potentially her enrollment. Even if she managed to maintain her student status, the stigma of casino ownership would likely prevent her from gaining admission to medical school. Maya hung up the phone and stared at the wall of Vincent's office, where a framed photograph showed the Golden Gate Casino's grand opening celebration. Her father stood in the center of the picture, cutting a red ribbon, while surrounded by smiling community members. He looked proud and confident, like a successful businessman celebrating a legitimate achievement. The man in the photograph bore no resemblance to the desperate gambler who had stolen her future. "Bad news?" Vincent asked, though her expression had already answered his question. "I'm probably going to lose my financial aid, which means I'll have to drop out of school, which means I won't be able to go to medical school, which means the last 8 years of my life have been a complete waste." Maya's voice was flat, drained of emotion. She'd passed beyond anger into a kind of numb acceptance of catastrophe. Vincent was quiet for a moment, then opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. "Maya, I want to show you something. Your father kept a journal, not about the casino business, but about you. Personal thoughts, things he was proud of, worries he had about your future."
He opened the notebook to a page dated 6 months earlier and began reading aloud. "Maya got accepted to UCSF today. I cried when she called to tell me. She's going to be a doctor, just like her mother always dreamed. I have to find a way to make this work, to pay for everything, to make sure she gets the future she deserves. The casino is doing well, but medical school is expensive. Maybe if I can make some smart investments, win a few big hands, I can build up enough money to pay for everything." Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes. Even in the depths of his addiction, her father had been thinking about her future, believing he could gamble his way to enough money to support her dreams. The tragedy wasn't that he'd stopped caring about her. It was that he'd cared so much that he'd convinced himself theft and fraud were acceptable, if they served her interests. The fifth crisis arrived on Monday morning in the form of Li Wei, a soft-spoken man in his 60s who introduced himself as the representative of the Chinatown Business Association. Maya had been hoping for a friendly visit from someone who could help her navigate the community politics of running a business in the neighborhood. Instead, Li Wei delivered news that made her previous problems seem manageable. "Miss Chen, the association has been discussing your situation, and we have serious concerns. Your father's gambling debts have created problems that extend beyond just your business. Some of the people he owes money to are not from our community, and their presence here is making everyone nervous." Li Wei explained that David Chen had borrowed money from lenders outside Chinatown when his local credit was exhausted. These outsiders had been coming around asking questions, visiting other businesses, making subtle threats that had the entire neighborhood on edge. The association had voted to ask Maya to either resolve her father's debts quickly or close the casino permanently. "We understand that you inherited this problem, and we have sympathy for your situation. But our first responsibility is to protect our community. If your casino becomes a source of danger for other businesses, we cannot support its continued operation." The meeting with Li Wei was followed by a visit from Tommy Wu, who had been working at the casino since it opened. Maya had come to rely on Tommy's knowledge of the day-to-day operations, but he approached her with obvious reluctance, fidgeting with his name tag as he delivered more bad news. "Miss Chen, I need to give you my 2 weeks' notice. I've been offered a job at my cousin's restaurant, and given everything that's happening here, I think it's time for me to move on." "Tommy, please. I know things are chaotic right now, but I'm working to fix everything. The casino needs people who understand how it works." "It's not about the chaos," Tommy said quietly. "It's about the people who've been coming around asking about your father. Yesterday, 2 men in expensive suits came to my apartment. They knew where I lived. They knew my schedule. They knew my family's names. They were very polite, but they made it clear that they're watching everyone connected to this place. Maya felt a cold fear settling in her stomach. The abstract concept of dangerous lenders was becoming concrete, personal, immediate. These weren't faceless threats from movies. They were real people who knew where her employees lived and weren't hesitant to make that knowledge known. After Tommy left, Maya called Vincent into his office for an emergency conference. She needed to understand exactly who her father owed money to and what kind of timeline she was working with. The local lenders are reasonable people, Vincent explained, consulting his notes. Mrs. Tang from the import business, Mr. Kim, who runs the jewelry store on Stockton Street, a few others. They'll work with us on payment plans because they understand business ups and downs. But the outside money, that's different. Vincent's voice dropped to a whisper, as if he was afraid of being overheard. Your father borrowed $60,000 from a group that operates out of Oakland. They call themselves an investment collective, but everyone knows they're loan sharks with expensive lawyers. They
Charge 20% interest per month. They don't negotiate payment plans, and they have a reputation for collecting debts through intimidation and violence.
What exactly does that mean?
It means they've been known to vandalize businesses, threaten family members, and in extreme cases, arrange accidents for people who don't pay what they owe. Maya stared at Vincent, trying to process the full implications of what he was telling her. Her father hadn't just stolen her money and forged her documents. He'd put her life in danger. The men in expensive suits who had visited Tommy weren't just debt collectors. They were criminals who used fear and violence as business tools. How long do I have? They gave your father 60 days to pay the full amount plus interest. That was 38 days ago. 22 days. Maya had 22 days to find $60,000 plus interest, or face consequences she couldn't even fully imagine. The weight of the deadline settled on her like a physical pressure, making it hard to breathe, hard to think clearly. That evening, Maya sat alone in the casino after closing time, surrounded by the silent gaming tables and dark machines. The space felt different when it was empty, less like a business and more like a stage set. All the excitement and energy revealed as artificial constructs designed to separate people from their money. She opened her laptop and began researching loan sharks, trying to understand what she was dealing with. The internet was full of horror stories. Businesses burned down, families threatened, people who had simply disappeared when they couldn't pay their debts. But she also found stories of people who had successfully negotiated with dangerous lenders, who had found ways to satisfy debts without destroying their lives. The key, according to several sources, was demonstrating good faith and maintaining open communication. Loan sharks were business people first and criminals second. They preferred to be paid rather than to waste time and resources on violence. But they also demanded respect and wouldn't tolerate being ignored or deceived. Maya picked up her phone and scrolled to her father's contact information. She had been calling him every day since Vincent's initial phone call, leaving increasingly desperate messages that went unanswered. Tonight, she decided to try a different approach. Dad, it's Maya. I know you're listening to these messages, even if you're not calling back. I found out about the casino, about the debts, about everything. I'm not calling to yell at you or to ask you to fix this. I know you can't. I'm calling to tell you that I'm going to handle it. I'm going to learn to run the casino, pay off the debts, and build something legitimate. But I need you to stay away. Don't come back to the casino. Don't contact Vincent. Don't try to help. You've done enough damage, and the only way I can fix this is if you're completely out of the picture. I love you, Dad, but I can't save you and save myself at the same time. After leaving the message, Maya felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time since Vincent's phone call, she'd made a decision that was entirely her own, based on her own assessment of the situation, rather than reacting to crises as they emerged. She spent the rest of the evening walking through the casino, familiarizing herself with every detail of the space she now owned. The mahjong tables were elderly Chinese women gathered to gossip and compete. The card games where serious players tested their skills against each other, and the house. The electronic machines that provided solitary entertainment for people who preferred gambling alone. This was her business now, her responsibility, her future. She could try to sell it and walk away, but that would mean abandoning the employees who depended on their jobs, disappointing the customers who had become a part of a community, and probably still owing money to dangerous people who wouldn't accept "I sold the business" as an excuse for unpaid debts. Or she could learn to run it properly, turn it into the kind of establishment her father had originally envisioned, and use its profits to dig out of the hole he had created. It would mean giving up her dreams of medical school, at least temporarily. It would mean learning skills she'd never wanted to acquire and dealing with people she'd never wanted to meet. But it would also mean taking control of her own life instead of being a victim of someone else's choices.
Maya made her decision standing in front of the photograph of the casino's grand opening, studying her father's proud face and trying to imagine what he'd been thinking that day. He'd created something that had the potential to be good, a gathering place for people who shared cultural traditions, a business that provided entertainment and jobs, a symbol of immigrant success in America. He'd also destroyed it through his addiction and poor judgment. But that didn't mean it couldn't be rebuilt, and it didn't mean she couldn't be the person to rebuild it. 22 days to find $60,000. Maya closed her laptop, turned off the lights, and locked the casino for the night. Tomorrow, she would begin learning how to save her own life. Maya's transformation from reluctant inheritor to determined casino owner began with a 6 a.m. phone call to Vincent Torino. She'd spent the night researching gaming regulations, loan restructuring strategies, and small business management techniques, fueled by coffee and the kind of desperate focus that comes from having no alternatives left. "Vincent, I need to meet with the Oakland lenders as soon as possible, and I need you to teach me everything about running this business, the real operations, not just the basics you've been showing me." Vincent's surprise was audible through the phone. "Maya, are you sure about this? Dealing with these people directly is dangerous, especially for someone with no experience." "I'm sure, but I'm not going in unprepared, and I'm not going in alone. I need you to contact them and arrange a meeting for this afternoon. Tell them the new owner wants to discuss payment terms and demonstrate good faith." Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you're enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. at a restaurant in Oakland's Chinatown, neutral territory that would allow both sides to meet without appearing to concede advantage. Maya spent the morning preparing with the same methodical approach she used to study for organic chemistry exams, treating the negotiation as a problem to be solved rather than a confrontation to be survived. She researched the lending group through public records and found that they operated under the name Pacific Investment Partners, with legitimate business licenses and a corporate address in downtown Oakland. The principals were Robert Chen, no relation, and Michael Santos, both of whom had backgrounds in finance and real estate. On paper, they looked like respectable businessmen rather than the criminal enforcers Maya had imagined. Vincent picked her up at noon, and they spent the drive to Oakland reviewing strategy. Maya would present herself as a serious business owner committed to honoring her father's debts, but she would also make it clear that she expected to be treated with respect and given reasonable terms for repayment. "The most important thing," Vincent explained as they crossed the Bay Bridge, "is to never show fear, but also never show arrogance. These people respect strength, but they destroy anyone who tries to challenge their authority." The restaurant was a small, family-owned establishment that served authentic Cantonese cuisine to a mostly local clientele. Maya and Vincent arrived early and chose a table in the back corner where they could see the entrance but maintain privacy for conversation.
Maya ordered tea and tried to calm her nerves by focusing on the familiar rituals of Chinese dining, the careful arrangement of chopsticks, the small cups designed for frequent refills, the background sounds of Cantonese conversation that reminded her of childhood visits to similar restaurants with her parents. Robert Chen and Michael Santos arrived exactly on time, both wearing dark suits and carrying themselves with the casual confidence of men accustomed to being taken seriously. Robert was tall and lean, probably in his early 40s, with sharp features and an expensive haircut. Michael was shorter and stockier, with the kind of calm demeanor that suggested he was comfortable with confrontation.
Miss Chen, Robert said as they approached the table, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Your father spoke of you often, always with great pride. The men sat down across from Maya and Vincent, and a server immediately appeared to take their order. Maya watched the interaction carefully, noting the deference shown to her guests and the server's obvious familiarity with them. These were regular customers, people who were known and respected in this establishment. Gentlemen, I want to be direct about why I asked for this meeting, Maya began after the server left. My father created a debt that's now my responsibility, and I want to discuss terms for satisfying that obligation. We appreciate your directness, Michael replied, but first, we need to understand something. Are you prepared to honor your father's commitments in full? I'm prepared to pay what's legitimately owed, yes, but I need to review the terms and the calculation of interest to make sure we're all working from the same numbers. Robert pulled out a leather folder and extracted several documents, laying them carefully on the table. Maya recognized her father's signature on a promissory note dated 6 weeks earlier, agreeing to borrow $60,000 at 20% monthly interest for a period of 60 days. The original loan was $60,000. With interest, the current balance is $72,000. You have 22 days to pay the full amount. Maya studied the documents carefully, noting the precise legal language and official formatting. These weren't hastily scrawled IOUs, they were professionally prepared contracts that would hold up in court, assuming anyone was willing to take loan sharks to court. Gentlemen, I have a problem with these terms. 20% monthly interest is illegal under California usury laws, and this contract is therefore unenforceable. The temperature at the table seemed to drop several degrees. Michael's expression didn't change, but Robert's eyes narrowed slightly and Maya could feel Vincent tense beside her. Miss Chen, Robert said quietly, we're not a bank. We're not subject to conventional lending regulations. We're investors who provided capital to your father for a high-risk venture. The returns we expect are commensurate with the risk we assumed. I understand that, and I'm not trying to avoid payment, but I am asking for reasonable terms that will allow me to satisfy this debt without destroying the business that generates the revenue to pay you. Maya opened her own folder and pulled out the financial statements Vincent had prepared, showing the casino's monthly revenue and expenses. The Golden Gate Casino generates approximately $8,000 in net profit per month. If you allow me to restructure this debt over 18 months, I can pay you the full $72,000 plus an additional $18,000 in fees, $90,000 total, which represents a 50% return on your original investment. The two men exchanged glances, and Maya could see them calculating. $90,000 paid over 18 months was a substantial return, and it was guaranteed by a functioning business rather than dependent on the cooperation of a desperate gambler. The problem is, Miss Chen, that we don't extend credit to people we don't know. Your father has a history with us, a relationship built over time. You're a complete stranger, asking us to trust you with nearly 2 years of payments. Then let me give you a reason to trust me, Maya replied. She pulled out a copy of her academic transcript showing 4 years of perfect attendance and a 3.9 GPA. I'm a senior at UC Berkeley, graduating summa cum laude with a degree in biochemistry. I've been accepted to medical school at UCSF. I'm not a gambler, I'm not an addict, and I'm not going to disappear when times get difficult.
I'm asking you to bet on my character rather than my father's. Michael spoke for the first time in several minutes. What happens if you fail? If the casino doesn't generate enough profit, or if you decide medical school is more important than paying debts? Then you take the business. I'll sign papers today giving you a lien on the casino and all its assets. If I default on any payment, you become the owner immediately. No legal proceedings necessary.
The negotiation continued for 2 hours, with Maya demonstrating a grasp of business concepts that surprised even Vincent. She had spent the morning memorizing cash flow projections, profit margin calculations, and risk assessment models, approaching the conversation with the same analytical rigor she'd applied to her science courses. Finally, Robert leaned back in his chair and smiled, the first genuine expression of approval Maya had seen from him. "Miss Chen, your father told us you were intelligent, but he didn't mention that you were also tough. We're willing to accept your proposal with one modification. You'll pay $5,000 per month for 18 months, for a total of $90,000. But we want the first payment within 1 week to demonstrate your commitment." "Done," Maya said immediately, "but I want something in return. I want your word that my employees and customers will not be intimidated or threatened during the repayment period. This business depends on people feeling safe when they come here." "You have our word," Michael replied. "As long as you make your payments on time, no one connected to your business will be bothered." They shook hands across the table, and Maya felt a surge of something she hadn't experienced in weeks: control. She'd negotiated with dangerous people and achieved an outcome that gave her a chance to succeed rather than just survive. The drive back to San Francisco was quiet, both Maya and Vincent processing what had just happened. Finally, Vincent broke the silence. "Maya, I have to ask, where did you learn to negotiate like that? You handled them like someone with years of business experience." "I didn't learn it anywhere. I just treated it like any other problem that needed to be solved. You gather information, analyze the variables, identify the optimal outcome, and work toward that goal. It's the same process I use for chemistry or physics or any other subject." "And you're really willing to give up medical school for this?" Maya stared out the window at the San Francisco skyline, considering the question. The answer surprised her with its clarity. "I'm not giving up medical school. I'm postponing it. The casino is going to pay for my education, just not in the way my father planned." That evening, Maya called a staff meeting at the casino, gathering all 12 full-time employees to explain the situation and her plans for moving forward. She'd spent hours preparing for this conversation, knowing that the business's success depended on gaining the trust and cooperation of people who had known her father far longer than they'd known her. "I want to be honest with all of you about what's been happening," she began, standing in front of the main gaming area while her employees sat at the card tables. "My father has a gambling addiction, and he's been using casino funds to cover his personal debts. That's going to stop immediately." She outlined the new management structure, with herself as owner and Vincent as general manager. She explained the financial situation honestly, including the debt to Pacific Investment Partners and the payment schedule they'd negotiated. Most importantly, she announced immediate changes to bring the casino into compliance with labor regulations. Effective Monday, everyone will be receiving proper employment contracts with health insurance, overtime pay, and paid sick leave. I know some of you have been working here without these protections, and that's not acceptable. Elena Vasquez, the union organizer, had been invited to observe the meeting. She stood up when Maya finished her presentation. "Ms. Chen, the workers I represent are willing to give you a chance to prove yourself, but we'll be monitoring the situation closely to ensure that these promises are kept." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Maya replied, "and I hope you'll be available to help me understand what other changes need to be made. I'm new to this business, and I want to do things right." The most emotional moment of the meeting came when Mrs. Liu, the elderly woman who played mahjong every Tuesday and Thursday, stood up to address Maya in halting English. "Your father is good man with bad sickness. You are good daughter to help him. We will help you too." Several other customers nodded in agreement, and Maya realized that she wasn't just inheriting a business, she was inheriting a community that was willing to support her efforts to succeed.
The meeting ended with practical discussions about schedules, responsibilities, and immediate priorities. Maya was struck by how knowledgeable and dedicated her employees were, how much they cared about the casino's success and reputation. Her father might have been negligent about legal compliance, but he'd hired good people who took pride in their work. Later that night, Maya sat in Vincent's office, reviewing the employee files and marveling at the stories they revealed. Tommy Wu was sending money to his parents in China while putting himself through community college. Maria Santos, one of the dealers, was a single mother supporting 3 children. James Kim, the head of security, was a Korean War veteran who'd been unable to find work elsewhere because of his age. These weren't just employees. They were people with families, dreams, and financial obligations who depended on the casino for their livelihood. Maya's decision to save the business wasn't just about paying off her father's debts or protecting herself from dangerous lenders. It was about maintaining jobs for people who had limited alternatives, preserving a gathering place for a community that valued its traditions, and proving that David Chen's mistakes didn't have to define the future of everything he'd built. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message from her study partner, James Rodriguez. "Heard you've been MIA this week. Everything okay? Don't forget we have the MCAT prep session tomorrow." For a moment, Maya felt the weight of everything she was giving up. The MCAT prep sessions, the medical school interviews, the carefully planned future that had motivated her for years. But she also felt something new, the satisfaction of building something rather than just studying about it, of solving real problems that affected real people rather than hypothetical scenarios in textbooks. She typed back, "Can't make it. Long story, but I'm starting a new chapter. We'll explain later." Maya Chen was no longer a pre-med student who happened to own a casino. She was a casino owner who happened to have a background in science, and that distinction made all the difference in how she approached the challenges ahead. As she locked up the Golden Gate Casino for the night, Maya paused to look at the framed photograph of the grand opening celebration. Her father's face still smiled back at her, proud and confident. But now she could see something else in his expression, the desperate hope of a man trying to convince himself that his dreams were achievable. Maya hung a new photograph next to the old one, a picture of herself shaking hands with Robert Chen and Michael Santos at the restaurant in Oakland. In this image, she looked serious but determined, like someone who understood the gravity of her situation but wasn't intimidated by it. Tomorrow, she would begin the real work of transforming the Golden Gate Casino from her father's failed dream into her own successful reality. 3 months after her negotiation with Pacific Investment Partners, Maya Chen had transformed not only the Golden Gate Casino, but herself. The frightened pre-med student who had stumbled into an unwanted inheritance was gone, replaced by a confident business owner who understood both the mechanics of gaming operations and the psychology of the people who frequented them. The changes began with small details that accumulated into a completely different atmosphere. Maya replaced the harsh fluorescent lighting with warm LED fixtures that made the gaming area feel like an upscale restaurant than a gambling den. She hired an interior designer, Elena Vasquez's sister Carmen, who needed work and understood the cultural significance of creating a space that honored Chinese traditions while appealing to a broader clientele.
The most significant transformation was in the casino's approach to customer service. Maya instituted a philosophy she called hospitality-first gaming, treating each patron as a guest rather than a source of revenue. She trained her dealers to engage in conversation, to remember regular customers' names and preferences, to create the kind of personal connections that made people want to return for the social experience as much as the gambling opportunities. The psychology of gambling is fascinating, Maya explained to Vincent during one of their weekly business reviews. People don't come here just to win money. They come for the excitement, the social interaction, the escape from routine. If we can provide those things consistently, the gaming revenue takes care of itself. Maya's academic background proved surprisingly relevant to casino management. Her understanding of statistics helped her optimize the house edge on various games to maximize profit while maintaining player interest. Her knowledge of human behavior, gained through psychology electives, informed her approach to customer relations and employee management. Most importantly, her scientific training had taught her to collect data, analyze results, and adjust strategies based on evidence rather than intuition. The financial turnaround was dramatic. Within 6 weeks of implementing her changes, monthly net profit had increased from $8,000 to $12,000. The improved working conditions and regular paychecks had motivated her employees to provide better service, which attracted new customers and encouraged existing patrons to visit more frequently. Maya's reputation in Chinatown evolved from cautious acceptance to genuine respect. Li Wei from the Business Association became one of her strongest supporters, regularly bringing potential customers to see how a young woman had revitalized a struggling enterprise. Other business owners sought her advice about marketing, customer service, and financial management. The relationship with Pacific Investment Partners transformed as well. Maya's first monthly payment had been delivered exactly on time, accompanied by a detailed financial report showing the casino's improved performance. Robert Chen called her personally to express his approval and to suggest ways the lending group might help her expand the business. Ms. Chen, we've been in the lending business for 15 years, and we've never had a borrower send us monthly financial statements along with their payments. Your level of professionalism is remarkable. I want you to see that your investment is secure, but I also want you to understand that the Golden Gate Casino is becoming something special. If you're ever interested in additional investment opportunities, I'd welcome that conversation. The exchange represented a complete reversal of their relationship. Maya was no longer a desperate debtor hoping to avoid collection efforts. She was a successful entrepreneur whose business was generating reliable returns for her investors. The most challenging aspect of Maya's new life was learning to balance the demands of casino ownership with her personal relationships and future plans. She'd taken a leave of absence from UC Berkeley, telling her academic advisor that she needed time to resolve family financial issues. The dean of students had been surprisingly understanding, offering to hold her place in the pre-med program for up to 2 years. Her relationship with her father remained complicated and painful. David Chen had called twice since Maya's first voicemail message, both conversations brief and awkward. He was living in a sober living facility in Sacramento, attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings and working at a print shop for minimum wage. His remorse was genuine, but so was Maya's anger about the position he'd put her in. "I know I can never make up for what I did to you," he said during their most recent conversation, "but I want you to know that I'm proud of what you've built. The casino was always supposed to be for your future. I just took a detour that almost destroyed everything. Dad, I'm not ready to forgive you yet. Maybe someday, but not yet. Right now, I need to focus on moving forward." Maya's social life required complete reconstruction. Her old friends from college had difficulty understanding her transformation from pre-med student to casino owner. Some were fascinated by her new career, others were disapproving, and a few seemed to think she'd abandoned her principles for easy money. James Rodriguez was among the most supportive, visiting the casino several times and marveling at the operation Maya had built. "You know, you're still helping people," he observed during one visit, "just differently than you planned. Mrs. Liu and her friends have a place to socialize and maintain their cultural traditions. Your employees have good jobs with benefits. You're providing a service that people value." Maya began to see the truth in his observation. Medicine wasn't the only way to improve people's lives. Creating economic opportunities, preserving cultural spaces, and building community connections were equally valuable contributions to society. The Golden Gate Casino's success attracted attention from unexpected sources. A reporter from the San Francisco Chronicle wrote a feature article about Maya's story, focusing on her transformation of a struggling business into a model of responsible gaming and community engagement. The article led to speaking invitations from business organizations and academic institutions interested in her perspective on entrepreneurship and family enterprise succession.
Maya discovered that she enjoyed public speaking, particularly when she could discuss the intersection of business strategy and social responsibility. 6 months after taking control of the casino, Maya received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Sarah Chen, a professor of business ethics at Stanford University, and a distant cousin she'd met only a few times at family gatherings. Dr. Chen had read the Chronicle article and was intrigued by Maya's approach to transforming an inherited business. Maya, I have a proposition for you. Stanford's Graduate School of Business is developing a new program in family enterprise management, focusing on the unique challenges of inheriting and operating businesses with complex histories. We'd like you to consider applying for our executive MBA program with a focus on developing case studies based on your experience. The offer was tempting but complicated. Maya had found genuine satisfaction in running the casino, but she'd also begun to feel constrained by the limitations of the gaming industry. An MBA would provide tools and credentials for expanding into other business sectors, but it would also require time away from the casino during a critical growth period. Dr. Chen, I'm honored by the invitation, but I have commitments here that I can't abandon. The casino employs 18 people, and I have debts that require consistent attention. What if we could structure the program to accommodate your schedule? Evening classes, online components, internship credit for your casino management experience? We're very interested in having you as part of this inaugural program. Maya spent several weeks considering the proposal, consulting with Vincent and her employees about the implications for the casino's operations. The unanimous response was encouragement to pursue the opportunity, with Vincent volunteering to take on additional management responsibilities to free up Maya's time for coursework. Maya, you've turned this place around because you brought new ideas and fresh perspectives to an old business. An MBA will give you even more tools to help the casino grow, and it will prepare you for whatever you want to do next. The Stanford program accepted Maya as one of 20 students in the Pilot Family Enterprise MBA program. Her first semester courses included organizational behavior, financial analysis, marketing strategy, and business ethics, subjects that provided theoretical frameworks for concepts she'd been developing intuitively through her casino management experience. Maya's first major academic project was a comprehensive case study of the Golden Gate Casino's transformation, examining the interplay between family dynamics, addiction issues, cultural factors, and business strategy. The research required her to interview employees, customers, community leaders, and even Pacific investment partners about their perspectives on the casino's evolution.
The project revealed patterns Maya hadn't fully appreciated. The casino's success wasn't just about improved management, it was about creating authentic connections between the business and its community. Customers felt ownership of the casino's success because Maya had made them partners in its transformation rather than just consumers of its services. Tommy Wu, who had decided to stay after Maya's reforms, provided particularly insightful observations. Before, we were just trying to survive each day. Mr. Chen was always stressed about money, and that stress affected everyone. Now we're building something together. Maya includes us in decision-making, she listens to our ideas, and she makes us feel like we're part of something important. Maya's case study became the foundation for her master's thesis on cultural entrepreneurship, preserving community identity in transition-era family businesses. The academic work helped her articulate principles she'd been applying intuitively: the importance of honoring cultural traditions while adapting to contemporary market conditions, the value of transparent communication in building stakeholder trust, and the potential for small businesses to serve as community anchors in rapidly changing neighborhoods. During her second year in the MBA program, Maya began exploring opportunities to apply her casino experience to other business challenges. She consulted with several family-owned restaurants in Chinatown that were struggling with succession planning and modernization issues. Her approach combined financial analysis with cultural sensitivity, helping traditional businesses adapt to new circumstances without losing their essential character. The consulting work led to a partnership opportunity with the Chinatown Community Development Corporation, which was seeking ways to support local businesses while preserving the neighborhood's cultural identity. Maya proposed a comprehensive program that would provide business planning services, access to capital, and marketing assistance to family-owned enterprises throughout the community. Maya has a unique understanding of the challenges facing second-generation business owners, explained Margaret Wong, the CDC's executive director. She's lived through the process of inheriting a business with complex problems and transforming it into something sustainable and meaningful. Her experience gives her credibility that external consultants could never achieve. The partnership with the CDC expanded Maya's role from casino owner to community business advocate. She developed workshops on topics ranging from digital marketing for traditional businesses to succession planning for aging entrepreneurs. Her sessions were particularly popular among young adults who had inherited or were expected to inherit family businesses but felt unprepared for the responsibilities involved. Maya's personal life also evolved during this period. She began dating Alex Chen, no relation, a fellow MBA student who was studying sustainable business practices with a focus on the food industry. Alex understood the demands of running a family business. His parents owned a chain of organic grocery stores, and he appreciated Maya's commitment to both profit and social responsibility. Their relationship developed slowly, built on shared values and mutual respect rather than romantic passion. Alex often visited the casino, helping Maya implement new customer feedback systems and efficiency improvements. He also introduced her to concepts from environmental sustainability that proved applicable to business operations. The importance of long-term thinking, the value of stakeholder engagement, and the potential for small businesses to serve as community anchors in rapidly changing neighborhoods. 2 years after inheriting the Golden Gate Casino, Maya received a phone call that brought her journey full circle. Dr. Patricia Williams from UC Berkeley was on the line, but this time she wasn't calling to discuss Maya's academic eligibility problems. Miss Chen, the university would like to invite you to speak at our commencement ceremony next month. We've been following your story, and we believe your experience represents exactly the kind of innovative thinking and social responsibility we want to celebrate. Maya accepted the invitation, though she insisted on sharing the stage with Vincent Torino and several of her employees. Her commencement address focused on the theme of unexpected paths to purpose, challenging graduates to remain open to opportunities that might not match their original plans, but could lead to equally meaningful careers.
2 years ago, I thought I knew exactly what my life would look like, she told the audience of graduating seniors and their families. I was going to be a doctor. I was going to save lives in hospitals. I was going to follow a very traditional path to success. Instead, I became a casino owner, a small business advocate, and a community organizer. I'm still saving lives, just not in the way I expected. Maya's speech resonated particularly with students who were facing uncertain job markets and family pressures to pursue specific careers. Several approached her afterward to discuss their own struggles with balancing personal dreams and family obligations. The commencement appearance led to additional speaking opportunities, including a TED Talk titled The Accidental Entrepreneur: Finding Purpose in Crisis. The presentation went viral, generating over 1 million views and establishing Maya as a prominent voice in discussions about family business succession, responsible gaming, and community-centered entrepreneurship. Maya's growing public profile attracted the attention of investors interested in supporting her expansion plans. The Golden Gate Casino had become so successful that she was considering opening a second location, this time designed from the ground up to embody her philosophy of hospitality-first gaming and community engagement. Pacific Investment Partners approached her about becoming an equity partner in the expansion, offering to provide startup capital in exchange for a percentage of ownership in the new venture. The negotiation was remarkably different from their first meeting. Maya was now the party with leverage, and Robert Chen and Michael Santos were essentially asking permission to invest in her vision. Ms. Chen, we've learned more about business management from watching your operation than from any other investment we've made, Robert admitted during their expansion discussion. We'd like to be part of whatever you build next. Maya agreed to the partnership, but with conditions that reflected her commitment to ethical business practices. The new casino would operate with complete transparency, all employees would receive equity stakes in addition to their salaries, and a percentage of profits would be donated to community development programs in Chinatown.
The second Golden Gate Casino opened in Sacramento 18 months later, designed specifically to serve the Asian American community in California's capital city. Maya hired her father as the assistant manager, a decision that surprised everyone who knew their history. David Chen destroyed my trust, but he also taught me everything I know about resilience and the importance of second chances, Maya explained to a reporter who questioned her decision. He's been sober for 3 years, he understands the gaming business better than anyone, and he's earned the right to contribute to rebuilding what he once damaged. The father-daughter business partnership was complicated and sometimes tense, but it also provided both of them with opportunities for healing and growth. David brought decades of practical experience and deep relationships within the gambling community. Maya provided strategic vision and the management skills necessary to operate a modern, compliant gaming establishment. Their working relationship slowly rebuilt the personal connection that addiction had damaged. Maya began to understand her father as a complex human being, rather than simply as the source of her problems. David began to see his daughter as an accomplished adult, rather than the child he'd been trying to protect through increasingly destructive choices. "I spent years trying to give you a perfect future," David told Maya during one of their weekly business meetings. "I never realized that the best thing I could give you was the opportunity to build your own future, even if it meant letting you struggle and make mistakes." Maya's success story attracted attention from business schools, family therapy organizations, and addiction treatment centers interested in her approach to rebuilding trust and creating accountability within family business relationships. She began consulting with other families dealing with similar issues, helping them navigate the complex dynamics of addiction, business ownership, and intergenerational trauma.
The consulting work led to Maya's decision to pursue a doctorate in organizational psychology, with a focus on family business systems and addiction recovery. Stanford offered her a full fellowship to develop research on the intersection of family dynamics and business performance, with the Golden Gate casinos serving as her primary case study. Maya's doctoral research revealed patterns that had implications far beyond the gaming industry. Businesses owned by families dealing with addiction showed specific characteristics: inconsistent decision-making, unclear communication patterns, financial irregularities, and employee uncertainty about leadership stability. But businesses that successfully addressed these issues often emerged stronger than they'd been before the crisis, with improved systems, clearer roles, and deeper stakeholder commitment. The research attracted funding from the National Institute of Mental Health and the Small Business Administration, establishing Maya as a leading expert on family business recovery and resilience. Her work was cited in academic journals, business publications, and addiction treatment literature. 5 years after inheriting the Golden Gate Casino, Maya had built a portfolio of activities that combined business ownership, academic research, community advocacy, and family therapy consulting. The casino remained her primary source of income and professional identity, but it had become the foundation for a much broader mission of helping families and communities recover from trauma and build sustainable prosperity. Maya's relationship with Alex Chen evolved into marriage during her 4th year of doctoral studies. Their wedding took place at the original Golden Gate Casino, with employees, customers, community leaders, and family members celebrating in the space that had become the center of Maya's transformed life. The ceremony incorporated Chinese traditions and contemporary elements, reflecting Maya's approach to honoring cultural heritage while embracing innovation. Vincent Torino served as Maya's honorary father, walking her down the aisle in the absence of David Chen, who was in Sacramento managing the second casino during what had become their busiest season. Dr. Sarah Chen from Stanford delivered a toast that captured the significance of Maya's journey. Maya Chen inherited a disaster and transformed it into a blessing. She inherited debt and turned it into investment. She inherited broken trust and rebuilt it into a foundation for community prosperity. Most importantly, she inherited someone else's dream and made it into her own vision. Maya's wedding gift from Pacific Investment Partners was the deed to the original Golden Gate Casino building, which they had quietly purchased from the landlord and transferred to her ownership as recognition of her successful management and community leadership. The gesture represented the complete transformation of their relationship from predatory lenders and desperate debtor to genuine business partners and mutual admirers. 3 years later, Maya stood before a conference room full of MBA students at Harvard Business School, delivering a guest lecture on crisis management and family business succession. The Golden Gate Casino case study had become required reading in multiple business programs, and Maya's approach to transforming inherited problems into entrepreneurial opportunities was taught as a model for sustainable business development. The most important lesson I learned, Maya told the students, is that crisis often reveals opportunities that would never have been visible under normal circumstances. If my father hadn't stolen my insurance settlement, I never would have discovered my talent for business management. If I hadn't been forced to negotiate with dangerous lenders, I never would have developed the confidence to build something entirely new. In the 5 years since inheriting the casino, Maya had expanded the Golden Gate brand to include 4 locations across California, each designed to serve specific cultural communities while maintaining the core principles of hospitality-first gaming and employee ownership. The Sacramento location served the Hmong and Vietnamese communities. The Los Angeles location focused on Korean and Japanese customers, and the newest location in San Jose catered to the growing South Asian population in Silicon Valley. Each casino was managed by local community members who understood the cultural nuances and social dynamics of their customer base. Maya's role had evolved from hands-on operator to strategic overseer, spending her time developing new business concepts and training managers rather than dealing with day-to-day operational issues. The Golden Gate Casino Foundation, established with profits from the expanding business network, had become one of the largest providers of small business loans and entrepreneur training for immigrant families in California. The foundation's approach combined financial support with cultural competency, recognizing that traditional business development models often failed to account for the specific challenges faced by first- and second-generation immigrant entrepreneurs. Maya's father had become the foundation's director of community outreach, using his knowledge of gambling addiction to develop prevention programs and support services for families dealing with similar issues. His transformation from the source of Maya's problems to a valuable partner in solving other people's problems represented the kind of redemption that seemed impossible during the darkest days of their crisis. David Chen understands addiction from the inside, explained Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a clinical psychologist who collaborated with the Foundation on treatment programs. His credibility with people who are struggling is unmatched because he's lived through the consequences of destructive choices and found a way to rebuild his life. Maya's doctoral dissertation, titled Cultural Entrepreneurship and Community Resilience, a longitudinal study of family business transformation, had been published by Harvard Business Review Press and become a best-selling business book. The research documented not only the Golden Gate Casino's evolution, but similar transformations in dozens of other family businesses across multiple industries. The book's success led to additional opportunities, including a regular column in Harvard Business Review, a podcast series on family business dynamics, and a consulting practice that worked with Fortune 500 companies dealing with succession planning and cultural transition issues. Maya's marriage to Alex Chen had produced twin daughters, Lily and Grace, who were now 2 years old and already showing signs of their parents' entrepreneurial instincts. Maya often brought them to the original Golden Gate Casino, where they were spoiled by employees and customers who treated them like community grandchildren. They're growing up surrounded by people who understand that business success means taking care of each other, Maya observed during a family dinner at the casino's restaurant. That's a lesson you can't learn in any classroom. The casino's restaurant had become a destination in its own right, serving authentic Cantonese cuisine alongside modern fusion dishes that reflected the diverse tastes of San Francisco's evolving population. The head chef was Maria Santos, the former dealer who had discovered a passion for cooking and earned her culinary degree with financial support from the Golden Gate Foundation. Tommy Wu had completed his business degree and become the general manager of the original casino, implementing technology improvements and customer service innovations that had been adopted across all 4 locations. His success represented the kind of internal promotion and professional development that Maya had made central to the Golden Gate philosophy. Maya doesn't just provide jobs, Tommy explained to a business reporter profiling the casino network. She provides career paths. Everyone who works here knows that their growth and success is just as important to her as the business's profitability. Mrs. Liu, now in her 80s, still played mahjong every Tuesday and Thursday, but she had also become the unofficial hostess for new customers who needed guidance in navigating the casino's social dynamics. Her table had become a gathering place for discussions about community issues, family problems, and business opportunities, transforming a corner of the gaming floor into an informal social service center. Maya's relationship with Vincent Torino had evolved into a true business partnership, with Vincent overseeing operations while Maya focused on strategic development and community engagement. Their complementary skills and shared commitment to ethical business practices had created a management model that was studied by business schools and copied by other family enterprises. Maya taught me that the best way to manage a business is to treat everyone connected to it as a stakeholder, rather than just an employee or customer. When people feel ownership of the success, they contribute in ways that go far beyond their job descriptions, reflected Vincent during a staff appreciation dinner. The success of the Golden Gate Network had attracted attention from major casino corporations interested in acquiring the brand, but Maya had consistently rejected offers that would compromise her commitment to community ownership and cultural authenticity. Instead, she had begun exploring opportunities to franchise the Golden Gate model to other entrepreneurs who shared her values and understood the importance of cultural competency in business development.
The franchising program required extensive training in Maya's management philosophy, financial planning, and community engagement strategies. Each potential franchisee spent 6 months working in one of the existing Golden Gate locations, learning not just the mechanics of casino operations, but the deeper principles of building businesses that served cultural communities. Maya's approach to franchising reflected her belief that sustainable business growth required maintaining the authenticity and community connections that had made the original casino successful. Rather than simply licensing the Golden Gate name and systems, she insisted on training franchisees who could genuinely represent the brand's values and contribute to its mission of community development. 10 years after inheriting the Golden Gate Casino, Maya received an honorary doctorate from UC Berkeley, recognizing her contributions to business innovation and community development. The ceremony took place in the same auditorium where she had once attended organic chemistry lectures, dreaming of a career in medicine that now seemed like it belonged to someone else's life. Maya Chen represents the best of what higher education can produce, declared the university chancellor during the graduation ceremony. She combined analytical thinking with cultural sensitivity, business acumen with social responsibility, and personal ambition with community commitment. Her success demonstrates that there are many ways to improve people's lives and contribute to society's well-being. Maya's acceptance speech focused on the theme of unexpected gifts, acknowledging that her greatest professional achievements had emerged from what initially seemed like her greatest personal disaster. My father's gambling addiction destroyed my original life plan, but it also forced me to discover capabilities I never knew I possessed, she told the graduation audience. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the foundation for the best thing you'll ever build. After the ceremony, Maya visited her father at the Sacramento casino, where David Chen had just completed his 10th year of sobriety and was training a group of new community outreach workers. Their relationship had found a balance between professional respect and personal affection, neither ignoring the damage that addiction had caused, nor allowing that history to prevent them from working together effectively. "I'm proud of what you've built, Maya," David said as they reviewed the foundation's latest quarterly report. "But I'm even more proud of who you've become. You took the worst situation I could create and turned it into something that helps other families avoid the mistakes I made." "Dad, I've learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing to build something better from the pieces of what was broken."
Maya's story had become a case study, not just in business schools, but in addiction treatment programs, family therapy practices, and community development organizations. Her approach to transforming crisis into opportunity provided a model for other families dealing with similar challenges, demonstrating that recovery was possible even from seemingly devastating betrayals. The Golden Gate Foundation had helped launch over 300 small businesses, provided addiction counseling to more than 1,000 families, and created employment opportunities for hundreds of people who might otherwise have struggled to find work. The economic impact extended far beyond the casino operations, creating a network of interconnected businesses and social services that strengthened entire communities. 15 years after Vincent Torino's first phone call, Maya received an invitation that would have seemed impossible during those desperate early days. The White House Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives wanted her to serve on a national advisory committee on immigrant entrepreneurship and community economic development. The appointment recognized Maya's unique expertise in building businesses that served cultural communities while contributing to broader economic growth. Her work had demonstrated
Immigrant entrepreneurship could be a powerful tool for community development, creating prosperity that benefited both specific cultural groups and the larger society. Maya accepted the appointment, seeing it as an opportunity to influence policy and resource allocation in ways that could help thousands of families like her own. Her first initiative as a committee member was to advocate for changes in small business lending practices that would make capital more accessible to immigrant entrepreneurs dealing with complex family and cultural dynamics. Maya Chen's story demonstrates the incredible potential that exists when we support people in building businesses that reflect their cultural values and community commitments, explained the committee chair during Maya's introduction ceremony. Her success provides a model for the kind of inclusive economic development that can strengthen our entire society. As Maya stood in the White House Rose Garden, accepting her appointment to national service, she thought about the journey that had brought her from that desperate phone call at 2:47 a.m. to this moment of recognition and responsibility. The path had been nothing like what she'd planned, but it had led to a life that was more meaningful and impactful than anything she could have imagined. The Golden Gate Casino continued to operate in the background of Maya's expanding influence, still serving its community of loyal customers and providing employment for dozens of families. But it had also become something larger, a symbol of the possibility for transformation, a demonstration that crisis could be converted into opportunity, and a proof that businesses could serve purposes beyond profit generation. Maya's daughters, now teenagers, spent their summers working at various Golden Gate locations, learning customer service skills and understanding the importance of treating business as a form of community service. They were growing up bilingual, bicultural, and committed to the idea that success meant creating opportunities for other people as well as themselves. "Mom, do you ever regret not becoming a doctor?" Lily asked during a family dinner at the original casino, now recognized as a historic landmark by the city of San Francisco. Maya looked around the restaurant, watching familiar faces engaged in animated conversations, seeing employees who had grown from entry-level workers into managers and business owners, observing the kind of community connections that made neighborhoods strong and resilient. "I did become a doctor," Maya replied, "just not the kind I originally planned to be. I help diagnose problems in families and businesses, I prescribe treatments that help communities heal, and I work to prevent the kinds of crises that almost destroyed our family. The tools are different, but the mission is the same: helping people build healthier, stronger lives." 20 years after inheriting the Golden Gate Casino, Maya published her memoir, titled The Accidental Empire: How Crisis Became Opportunity. The book became a bestseller and was adapted into a documentary film that won several awards for its portrayal of immigrant entrepreneurship and family resilience. Maya donated the proceeds from the book and film to the Golden Gate Foundation, which had grown into one of the most respected community development organizations in California. The foundation's work had expanded beyond small business loans to include affordable housing development, educational scholarships, and healthcare access programs. The foundation's headquarters occupied a building next to the original Golden Gate Casino, symbolically connecting Maya's past and present, her family's crisis and their recovery, her father's mistakes and their shared redemption. The building housed not only the foundation's offices, but also a community center, a business incubator, and a museum documenting the history of Chinese immigration and entrepreneurship in San Francisco. Maya's father, now in his 70s, served as the museum's volunteer director, sharing stories of both the successes and struggles that had shaped their community. His presentations to school groups and community organizations emphasized the importance of learning from mistakes, the possibility of second chances, and the value of building businesses that serve purposes beyond personal enrichment.
David Chen's transformation from the source of crisis to a leader in community healing represents one of the most powerful examples of redemption I've ever witnessed, observed Dr. James Chu, a psychiatrist who studied family business dynamics and addiction recovery. His willingness to acknowledge his mistakes and dedicate his remaining years to helping others avoid similar problems demonstrates the kind of moral growth that's possible even after devastating failures. As Maya approached her 50th birthday, she reflected on the unexpected trajectory that had taken her from pre-med student to casino owner to community leader to national policy advisor. The journey had been nothing like what she'd planned, but it had created a life that was more fulfilling and impactful than her original dreams. The Golden Gate Casino network had grown to include 12 locations across the western United States, each serving specific cultural communities while maintaining the core principles Maya had developed during those desperate early days in San Francisco's Chinatown. The business had provided employment for thousands of people and generated millions of dollars in community investment. But Maya's greatest pride came from the stories of individual transformation. The single mothers who had used foundation loans to start successful businesses, the former addicts who had found purpose in helping other families recover from crisis, the young people who had learned that entrepreneurship could be a form of community service rather than just personal advancement. Maya Chen had inherited a disaster and built an empire, but more importantly, she had learned that true success meant creating opportunities for other people to write their own stories of transformation and redemption. The Golden Gate Casino had become more than a business. It was a symbol of the possibility that existed when crisis was met with courage, determination, and a commitment to building something better from the pieces of what had been broken. On the 25th anniversary of Vincent Torino's first phone call, Maya stood once again in the office where her journey had begun, now surrounded by photographs documenting the growth of the Golden Gate Network and the thousands of lives that had been touched by the Foundation's work. The scared young woman who had once sat in this chair, overwhelmed by debts she hadn't created and responsibilities she hadn't wanted, had become someone she never could have imagined. The office walls displayed awards from business organizations, community groups, and government agencies recognizing Maya's contributions to entrepreneurship, community development, and family business innovation. But the display that meant the most to her was a simple framed letter from Mrs. Liu's granddaughter, thanking Maya for creating a place where 3 generations of their family had found community, purpose, and belonging. Your casino gave my grandmother friends, my mother a job, and me a model of what it means to build something that matters, the letter read. Thank you for showing us that business can be a form of love. Maya kept the letter on her desk as a reminder of why she had chosen to rebuild rather than run, to fight rather than surrender, to transform her father's crisis into her own opportunity to serve something larger than herself. As she prepared to leave the office that evening, Maya paused at the window overlooking Grant Avenue, watching the evening crowd of residents and tourists navigate the busy street. The neighborhood had changed significantly since she'd first walked these blocks as a desperate young woman trying to understand how her life had been turned upside down. But it retained the essential character that made it a home for people seeking opportunity and community in America. The Golden Gate Casino's discreet sign glowed softly in the twilight, welcoming another evening of customers who came not just to gamble, but to connect with friends, celebrate cultural traditions, and participate in the kind of community that had become increasingly rare in modern American life. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message from her daughter Grace, now a sophomore at Stanford studying business and public policy. Mom, I've decided on my senior thesis topic. I want to research the impact of culturally competent entrepreneurship on immigrant community development.
Can the Golden Gate Foundation be my primary case study? Maya smiled, recognizing in her daughter's message the continuation of a story that had begun with crisis and evolved into a legacy of service, innovation, and community commitment.
Work would continue, carried forward by new generations who understood that business success meant creating opportunities for other people to build their own versions of the American dream. Maya Chen had inherited a nightmare and built a vision, transforming her father's betrayal into a foundation for community prosperity and family healing. The Golden Gate Casino would continue to serve its customers, employ its workers, and support its community long after Maya's direct involvement ended, a permanent testament to the possibility that existed when crisis was met with courage and determination was channeled toward purposes larger than personal survival. The phone in Vincent's office rang one final time as Maya prepared to leave, but this time it wasn't bringing news of crisis or catastrophe. It was a young entrepreneur in Seattle calling to inquire about opening a Golden Gate franchise to serve the Korean community in her neighborhood. Another story was beginning. Another opportunity for transformation was emerging. Another chance to demonstrate that inherited problems could become the foundation for inherited solutions. Maya answered the phone with the same words Vincent had used 25 years earlier, but with an entirely different meaning. Golden Gate Gaming, this is Maya Chen. How can I help you build something better?